the 4 guards of boxing and learning which one suits you best. Hello Earthlings, Ultraviolet Ronald from the Bronx here, and today we're going to get into the 4 guards of boxing and learning which one suits you best, starting off with number 1, made famous by Winky Wright and Joshua Clottey, but really Winky Wright, the high guard starting from top to bottom. Now the thing with the high guard, you're using it to discourage your opponent. You're really using this guard and staying with the number 1 saying, keep your hands up at all times. Tuck in that chin, crunch your torso, making it as small as possible. You're being a little bit more square to invite your opponent in. Now, as that opponent is getting invited in, you can catch shots through the parry, off your forearms, and at the same time, slightly move out the way to create openings to counter with an uppercut, roll to get into the hooks, or at the same time, you can step back and come in with the cross and right back to guard. There's a lot of things that you can do from the high guard that is very useful, but the purpose of the high guard is to discourage your opponents. You don't want to have it too close to your face. You want to have it about 2 to 3 inches in front of your eyes. Okay, so when you're in that high guard, you're using your peripherals and you're using this stance to impose dominance, to take your opponent's confidence away. People very useful that you may not know, because I know a lot of people may not know Winky Wright, Canelo. Canelo uses that high guard so freaking well. If he's not using his head movement to be slick and get out the way, he's using that high guard to walk you down and invite you to throw crazy shots that which you would normally throw. And Bivol caught on to that. That's why he would throw his shots and come back out. He wouldn't just keep unloading because Canelo was waiting and timing him. If he would have pulled back on one of those shots and he was getting reckless, to counter him with one of those strong Canelo uppercuts or right hooks. Mayweather, he's another one. He'll walk you down with that high guard. Oh, Mayweather got pillow hands. Mayweather can't punch. A lot of people would still back off when he's coming towards them. I mean, Mayweather did it. Of course, he was not a real boxer, but he did it against Conor McGregor. He did it against Shane Mosley. He did it against a lot of fighters that he was like, okay, I'm going to impose my will on you through the high guard. Gervonta Tank Davis, when he fought Frank Martin, what was he doing? He was walking him down with that high guard and trying to catch shots and counter off of it. But the thing with it, even though it works perfectly well to discourage your opponent, you're going to have to take some to give some. Pitbull Esau Cruz. It's a very discouraging. If somebody's coming at you in a high guard and they're moving around and they're throwing these crazy looping shots and moving their head, it gets scary because you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. No matter what I do, it's not knocking them down. But a great boxer that has better IQ than that person that may be using that high guard, you can get away with jabbing and checking him as he's coming in and moving and just working around that high guard and not allowing that person to bully you into the corner to eventually take your lights out. Number 2, the mid guard. This is the traditional boxing stance, your bread and butter. Everything comes from the mid guard. People who usually operate the mid guard are boxer punchers, like a Miguel Cotto, like a Manny Pacquiao. Boxer punchers. Punchers that can get in, get to the body, get out, move, jab when they need to be explosive, pop, pop, and come back out. People usually that are boxer punchers, very strong, utilize the mid guard. It's the traditional stance. You can't go wrong with it. Everything comes from it, and you learn your fundamentals and just boxing overall through that mid guard. Now I'm gonna get into my favorite one, the one that's adopted more from the Europeans, preferably the Russians, the long guard. Now the purpose of the long guard is to keep a person off at the end of their jab. All right, boxers that will use this sometimes, Muhammad Ali, Lennox Lewis. You're keeping your distance. By keeping your hand out there, it's like a barrier. And they're like, oh my God, I have to get through this jab. If you look at Vladimir Klitschko, Alexander Usyk, Vasily Lomachenko, they will utilize those styles. Obviously, the most famous one of my favorite boxer right now, Dmitry Bivol. By utilizing your hand being there, it's mesmerizing. So you can circle it, you can drop it down, pepper it, just flicker it out there. You don't necessarily have to put power and put a little bit more power to stepping back, but it sets you up to try to land that straight right, which is the most deadly. So people that usually utilize the long guard, they're trying to set you up to hit you with that right hand. Long guard is perfect because, again, it helps you keep your distance and to time your opponent. Because you know, once they cross that void of your hand, pop, 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 that's when you're going to need to step up the power and really put some meat behind those punches. Pause, but put some power behind those punches when you are throwing it. So if you like to box traditionally, utilizing the sweet science, people who love boxing for what it is to hit and not get hit, the long guard works perfectly. Muhammad Ali would do it playing around, pop, and then you get too close, you catch you with that right hand. But if you like to utilize the straight punches more or try to turn that jab into a check hook, the long guard will work perfectly for you. But when you're utilizing the long guard, it's going to require more stamina because usually people who utilize the long guard are more on their toes. They're more bouncy. They're using a lot more body movement. And as a result, your cardio has to be up there to utilize it, because if it's not, you're going to be drained. And then guess what? Your hands drop, you become more stationary, your chin may be more exposed, and then it's easier for the opponent to get you out of there. So you have to train accordingly to what the style wants of you. Now, number 4, last, my favorite, very few people can utilize it unless you have phenomenal footwork, the low guard. People who are great at the low guard was Larry Holmes. Larry Holmes will move around the ring and throw that flicker jab from the waist. They couldn't see it coming. Roy Jones, he will move around, pop, coming with that gazelle hook with his hands down. It really takes you out of your game because you don't know where those punches are coming from. A boxer right now, Ben Whitaker. Ben Whitaker is doing that, with his drunken style to be silly with that low guard because, again, it's harder to see those punches. Paulie Malignaggi, he gets a lot of flack for not having power. But when he would utilize that low guard, I used to love it. Him just being all jiggly, calling him the Magic Man and shaking and just like really throwing out your game, feinting a lot. And then he always will come behind his jab. He throw punches and bunches behind that jab. So he's throwing pop, pop, and then moving around, pop, pop. Paulie actually had really good footwork and good feinting ability. That's how come he was able to become a champion, even though he didn't have power like that. But people forget, a lot of the power dissipated because he hurt his hand early in his career. Like if you look at a lot of his first fights, he knocked out a lot of his opponents, right? But after he started hurting his hand really bad, he had to back off. Same with Mayweather. When Mayweather was fighting at 130, 135, even 140, he was knocking out everybody. As soon as his hands started to become more brittle, he started breaking his bones in his hands a lot more. He couldn't really utilize his punching power. But again, going back to the low guard is excellent for people who are slick, very creatively sound. Again, Muhammad Ali, Larry Holmes, Roy Jones Jr., even Mayweather at times, but he's operating it from the Philly shell, will get into that low guard and he'll pop that jab, that up jab. It stings even more because it's coming from the bottom up. Terrence Crawford, you have to have a very slick Sugar Ray Leonard style for that to work for you. Because if you don't have a chin, you don't have great footwork, do not utilize the low guard because you'll be putting yourself in a position to get hurt just because it looks cool. I get it. This style looks cool. Like, yeah, hit me. And you're moving around. You think you know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing. And you're throwing the punches from here and all that. It looks cool, creating angles from it. But if you do not have the fundamentals down and your number one defense, which is your footwork, do not engage in the low guard. But everything starts from the mid guard, practice from there. Once you get the mid guard down, then try to find your style from there. Remember, the top four guards in boxing: high guard, mid guard, long guard, and low guard. Have fun training to find out which one suits you best. If you can find a coach that really works with you diligently, try to find a good coach or a good boxing gym so you can mirror people in the gym that are really good and know what they're doing. Film yourself, record yourself, watch yourself in the mirror to see mistakes that you may be making that you can correct. But have fun ultimately at the end while you're practicing. That's how you get very far in the sport, and treat it like you're a student of the game. Watch a lot of fights, read books if you can. Now, thank you for joining me on this journey to the ultraviolet. And if you liked the video, please comment and subscribe, and always work towards becoming your greatest version.